Hey guys, welcome to the Pursuit of Meaning podcast. I'm John Singleton, and this is the first episode called Why Are We Here? So let's get into it. Not all who wonder are lost. A lot of times I feel lost because I wonder. I think there's a lot of things in our society that, we value and that we talk about that are good things, but then when the rubber meets the road, there's a big disconnect between how we act and how we value. And I think that there's truth to both sides. I think that in some respects our values are a little outdated or are, don't have deep explanations. And on the other end, I think that our actions are, somewhat too divorced from our values. So I think if we can meet somewhere in the middle, I think that'd be a good idea. We seek meaning more than happiness. There's often been the analogy of, happiness is brought about by dopamine in the brain. And so there's an analogy, it's like, well, if you just put somebody in a coma, medically induced coma, and fed their brain dopamine, wouldn't that be just the ultimate form of happiness? Because their brain would just be turning over with dopamine. And it's hard to look at that and go, well, what exactly does that mean? That means that happiness is fleeting. Happiness comes and goes. You want your life to be filled with happiness, but happiness is the feeling, in the moment. The difference between that dopamine coma and doing something that brings value and meaning to your life, I think, is in the nature of what you're doing. I think you have to, if you're reading a paper, say you're interested in a certain topic, and why are you reading it? What's interesting about it? What's meaningful in the paper? It's like, well, it's going to hit on concepts, obviously. Otherwise, if it's just all Greek, you're not going to be able to read it. It's completely devoid of meaning for you. But once it takes those concepts, it's going to enlighten you in some way. It's going to lead you down a path in which, you get some form of additional understanding. Otherwise, you wouldn't read the paper. It's like, if you've got a paper sitting in front of you, you've read 10 times, you've analyzed for days, it's like, why do I want to read it again? There's nothing else meaningful in it. So when we look at meaning in this respect, how I think it is, and you guys, of course, this whole video is about getting comments from you guys and kind of getting a perspective about what you all think about these concepts. But what I think it seems to be is like you have to have a foot on what you already understand, whatever the concept is. You're like, this is my understanding. And then you ask some form of hypothesis or question. But the main thing is I want to start a dialogue between us, between me and people online, to get your perspective about these concepts and what you guys think is the truth. Because we're going to break it down into three concepts, right? We're going to try to define what we know. What we know is facts. We're not controversial. Things are not opinions. They're what we know. And those are always open to dialogue as well. I mean, people say, well, you think you know this, but, it's actually this way. That's fine. That's what we want. We want to seek understanding. We want to seek meaning. That's kind of the goal of all this. But then that's the first step is, we want to make sure what we know. And then we want to go from there and say what we think. Now, what we think is more opinionated. It's more of like, this is what we've gone through. This is what's likely the case. This is, what the evidence says, right? You have the evidence and you extrapolate from the evidence what you think it could be. And then we have a third category, which is where we're going to step out on some limbs. And these are very much like 50-50, you're going to be able to disagree with them. This is where I mainly want your opinions and feedbacks on, although on all three of those I want your feedbacks. Obviously, if we have something we think we know and we don't know it, it's not the case, then that just demolishes it all the way up the line. But especially on what could be the case, which is the third category, which is where we're kind of stepping out on limbs and being like, we know what this is. We see what it could, what it kind of is, as far as we extrapolate it out. And then could it be this? That's going to be our third category. And so really, I just want to bring everybody along for the ride. I want to become a better person. I want to become a better man. I want to get these things figured out. I'm going to have kids one day, and I want, I see so much inconsistencies and different things that I'm like, what is the right path to tread? One thing we know we have to accept that we know for sure is that we are here. and we need to make the most of being here. And happiness and meaning in life is in life, not just afterlife. And so, we want to break down these elements into what is the functional wisdom for what you should do as a parent, as a student, as a teacher, as an employee, as all these different things. We're going to break it down into those elements so that we can talk about, what's the best action. That's really where you derive the meaning of it, is you talk about, you have your understanding of it, and then you have something that is out of place, out of joint, and you want to reconcile the two. And you're like, okay, so we got to use our understanding and also be open to change and correction so that we get it right. We're not just, giving lip service to the ideas and then acting a completely different way. So that's the main thing. So we talked about the value action gap. Another thing on the other side of it, which is fully related to both, but is completely distinct, is the shadow. It's the Jungian shadow from psychology. And this is the idea of everything in your subconscious, everything that the conscious part of you rejects. You have biological needs, you have subpersonalities, you have desires that manifest themselves, and you reject them. So it's like this part of your shadow, and Jung said, I forget the exact quote, but he's like, if you don't reconcile your subconscious desires or wants and needs, then they can possess you. Like the darker your shadow is. It's like if you don't talk about the fact that you like to do X or whatever, or have done Y. A lot of these are where things like PTSD or post-traumatic or was it postpartum depression and different things, or different forms of depression, anxiety, have their roots. They come out of these things. Like if you've gone to the military and done something that you're having a hard time reconciling, it's like you've acted in a way that you have rejected in your personality, and that is really causing a wedge between you. And this is where we see, as far as shadow possession is the idea, and we'll dig more into that concept in further episodes. But if you're like somebody who becomes a drug addict, it's like they don't get there overnight. They're in a life where they're devoid of meaning, nothing makes them happy, their relationships are horrible, they don't have jobs, they're completely not meeting the needs of their subconscious or even just their conscious in that respect. And so whenever they take a drug to escape from that, that's very powerful, and it'll grip them and they can't get out of it. But if a person whose relationships are good, happy most of the time, has a meaningful job, has work that they like, and they take a drug, it's they're like, I don't want to give up all that I've built to have that. So incorporating the shadow and incorporating this value action gap are going to be the two main vehicles that we want to approach. And in doing so, we're going to use the three levels of analysis: what we know, what we think, and what could be the case. And along those, we want dialogue, up and down the list. So I think all of us are engaged in this search for meaning. I think all of us, should try to figure out what is meaningful in our life. Like what when we do we lose track of time? Do we enjoy doing so much that, it seems like the world around us is just bent on what we're doing, in that moment. And I think that tells us something when we encounter something like that. And that's the thing, is like a lot of times people get stuck in like, what do I want to do with my job? And that's where they're like completely like focused on that. It's like, that's not it. You can have a 9-to-5 job that pays the bills, and the meaning you find is in your family, in your relationship, your kids, your hobbies, things that you like to do, places you like to go, vacations you like to take, wherever that meaning is. I think we have a responsibility to pay the bills, that we have a responsibility to provide for the people around us and meet those needs. But we have a moral imperative to do what's meaningful. I really believe that. And that's the drive for what I want to do with this. So why are we here? Well, we're here to pursue what's meaningful in life. We want to try to be as happy as we can be, but sometimes meaning, you have to pursue what's meaningful. A lot of times you have to sacrifice being happy. There's people to get to the top of what they wanted to do. There's a lot they had to sacrifice to get there, and a lot of happiness. I mean, if you're just stuck in meaningless pleasures that make you happy, you're not going to wake up 6 months from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now and go, I'm where I want to be. That's the thing about meaning, is where you want to be. It's like, and you should fight with, all that you have to be where you want to be. And that's one thing why I want to get into teaching, is because I see so many kids when I substitute teach that have no clue what they want to do with their life. And I had no clue what I want to do with my life. I have a degree I don't use. It took me 5 years to get it. I've worked in an industry that I no longer wish to work in. If I had worked on this earlier, if I had, tried to figure it out, I would be better off, instead of just, at the age of 28 trying to plow this path, after just constantly, and you're not going to figure it out. You're going to try this, but you need to start that early. You ask, like I ask kids, what do you want to do with your life? And they're like, overwhelming majority have no clue, have not even thought about it to an extent where they're like, let me try this, let me try that. We need to try to do internships. You need to try to work underneath somebody. You need to try to dig down into what it really is and analyze it and start to learn about it and really start to see if that's what compels you to move forward. Because until you find that, you're not going to be happy, but you're not going to be satisfied. You're not going to be like, yes, this is what I want to do. And a lot of people don't find that in work. Some people find that in hobbies and different things, and that's cool. Meaning is all around us, in our relationships, in our hobbies, in the shows we watch, and the things we post. It's all around us. So I'm hoping to bring you guys along for the ride. I'm hoping to get a lot of dialogue back, because that's the main thing. I've been searching for meaning. I've been trying to dig down into what we should do, not just what we do, but what we should do, and how we should act, and how we should raise our kids, and how we should do all these different things functionally for myself, but then also if you guys can get stuff out of it, then I feel like that's a great win. So tune in next time. I'm going to try to do these as often as I can. I'm going to try to keep them to 15 minutes. I might have gone over on this a little bit, but that's it. The pursuit of meaning. Let's go. Come along with me.